What's up, everybody, and thank you so much for joining today. I'm here at sportsbet.io, and I'm joined today by Lou Finocchiaro, pro sports handicapper, proprietor of Gamblu.com, and a sports investor, and myself, Chris Farley, at Farley Bets there on Twitter, pro better now for 5 years as well. We're here to talk about the primetime games of the Week 1 NFL slate, as well as another special little treat on the Sunday games as well from a sports betting perspective. And Lou, let's just get right into it. Thursday night football is around the corner, the very first game of the season, and it should be a barn burner, right? We have the Baltimore Ravens, going up to the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. Chiefs, two-time Super Bowl winners, coming off another trophy there on Thursday night. Probably going to be a raucous crowd there at Arrowhead. Chiefs 3-point favorites opened up around 2.5, and you could get it at 2.5 maybe like a week or so ago, but it has settled in at -3 at most books. A fair line, I would say, Lou, right? I mean, obviously they're the Super Bowl champs. They're at home. You have to give them some credit there. But, in the NFL gambling world, that's almost an even line, right? On an even playing field. Of course, we know that it's not because they're at Arrowhead. So what are your initial thoughts on this game from a pro betting perspective? First game of the season, obviously a lot of eyes on this one.
Well, first off, Chris, it's great to visit with you. Our love and passion, the NFL is back. Great rematch game from last year's championship game kicks us off. And you got to figure that Baltimore wants to come in with a chip and show Kansas City that they're here. Listen, there's only 18 games, or they play 17 games in the NFL. Each one means a ton. So these guys got their ears pinned back for each other. I look at Baltimore and I see a team that was actually enhanced by the incoming running back, Henry, that's going to be their workhorse for them now. That said, they have a new defensive coordinator, and new defensive coordinators or offensive coordinators sometimes takes a little time to gel. So you got a team on the defense learning some new vernacular, having to get used to themselves, a defensive side of the football that maybe was in need of a little improvement. So they go into Kansas City. It was 2.5 since May. Now we've seen it pump up to 3. I think that's because we're seeing Kansas City's wide receiver core complete themselves, even though Hollywood Brown will not be playing. That's a receiver core. They just got the young man back from New England that's going to work in the middle with Kelsey as a tight end kind of a piece. And so you see a very intriguing card. Now, an intriguing game. But in this game, there hasn't been any line movement since May. These guys, the bookmakers for the NFL, they didn't wake up last night. They're very good. This line hasn't moved. I perceive no value either way. My power rankings have Kansas City 1.5 or so ahead of Baltimore. You give Kansas City 2 points for home field advantage. At least that's how my rankings work. And you got Kansas City at 3 or 3.5. So I suppose if this hits 3.5 with public hitting Kansas City before the game starts, I'd look at taking that 3.5. But right now, no aggressive position on the game, but a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, a lot of intrigue for me too. I don't want to give off the impression that I have a lot of bets in week 1 of the NFL season, because I think like you, Lou, I am approaching it with a very agnostic, Socratic, if you will. We were talking a little bit before this show, how we really don't know anything about these teams. Of course, we know some things from last year and how they, the patterns that they've built and how they've operated, but I don't have a lot of exposure week 1 in the NFL. That being said, I do think that, I see some sell signs on the Baltimore Ravens as far as the transitions go that you spoke to, right? They lose Mike McDonald, who's a sought-after defensive guru. A lot of other coaches try to copy him, right? He's up in Seattle now. I'm sure Zach Orr will do a great job with the Ravens ultimately as a defensive coordinator, right? Kind of a homegrown guy there in their system. But, man, this is a big challenge, Lou. I mean, week 1 at Arrowhead, you're kind of not hearing a lot from Kansas City Chiefs camp. They're coming into the season kind of quiet, aside from the Taylor Swift stuff and Jason Kelsey and all that, or Travis Kelsey, excuse me. But I love that they have Xavier Worthy, their first round draft pick on their team, because that kid, 4.21, he ran a 40-yard dash. I think he's going to open up their offense in a similar way that we saw Tyreek Hill do. Now, I'm not saying he's like Tyreek Hill just yet, but we know what Patrick Mahomes can do with that kind of speed in his offense. And I hate that the Baltimore Ravens lost 3 starters on their offensive line. Bringing in Derrick Henry is a good thing. I'm just not convinced that maybe he's going to be featured in the biggest way right away, or that they're going to have a lot of success against Chris Jones in that defensive front. So there's a lot of things stacking up for me on Kansas City's side. I don't want to overthink this. I think if this was any other week in the season and I had a -3 here, you can get some pretty good value in those -3s out there in the marketplace right now. So I have a very light play on the Chiefs to cover that line at home. I don't know if you're going to hear a lot else from me as far as official picks on this show goes, Lou, but I do have a little bit of an investment on the Chiefs tonight. I think this is a great spot for them, whereas we do see a Ravens team that's in a lot of transition.
Those that are cautious in week 1 are those I respect, Chris.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, exposure to the NFL marketplace on a week-to-week basis should always be somewhat limited, right? I mean, they are very good at what they do as far as setting those odds go, and the sharps who are betting them. Let's move on to the Friday night football game, which that didn't exist seasons ago, Lou, but this is the NFL. They know how to do it, right, from a business perspective. And now we're going to Brazil for the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Another game where you don't see a lot of line movement there, right? It's settled in at that 3 in favor of the Eagles. Now that's a home game for the Eagles, although, of course, it's not in Philadelphia. It's in a brand new venue for both teams. So you have a red-hot Jordan Love, which at least feels that way heading into this season. Surprised a lot of people last season with just how good he is. I would say the Packers only got better, right? They added Josh Jacobs, added some pieces to their defense. But Philly now is also kind of on a revenge tour, you would think, this year, because they really crumbled at the end of the season, losing outright to the Tampa Bay Bucks in the wild card round. So Philly, Green Bay, Friday night football, Lou. What is your analysis of this one?
Well, what's exciting to me is to be able to watch football from Brazil, because I'm usually watching UFC from Brazil, which is great. And Brazil's a great country, some political turmoil now. So, I hope everybody's safe and sound. As far as the football game is concerned, this can't be great for these players. I know the NFL's on its eminent domain to take over the world, and that's great. But, boy, it's tough on the players. I think in this game, I look less at the brass tacks and the X's and O's. There's great personnel on both sides, but I see overall a temperament in Green Bay that's on an upward swing after last year, and there's pressure in Philly. Now, there's always pressure in Philly, but Sirianni 2 years ago takes them to the Super Bowl. Last year has that second half of the season, as you alluded to, Chris. And so there's some rumblings and there's indigestion in Philly, and indigestion turns into earthquake really quickly in the city of brotherly love. So this is a critical game for both teams. I think I want to lean to Green Bay, but again, no numeric advantage, so no big, strong opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you there. No numeric advantage for me either. I'm going to stay off this game. I'll just add to a few points that you made. Something that I've been observing and kind of commenting on for a long time. And I think people think I'm just hating on the Eagles because I'm a New York Giants fan, which things haven't been going too well in that department, Lou. But, the schism, so to speak, between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni is not a surprise to me, right? And Jalen Hurts has a stoicism to him, like a solitude, like natural leader. Nick Sirianni just always kind of popping off at the mouth. I don't think that's a symbiotic relationship. It's going to be interesting to see how that relationship comes out to play in these high pressure games, because the Green Bay Packers are a true NFC contender. They're not going to let down. This just reminds me a little bit of when they visited Detroit on Thanksgiving, and everybody thought last year that the Lions were going to blow them out of the building. Of course, Jordan Love came in there and sliced and diced that Detroit Lions defense. I'm not convinced that the Eagles defense is going to be that great right away. Had a lot of issues last season. I know they have Vic Fangio now, but you could argue they have the worst edge rushers in a decade there for the Philadelphia Eagles on their defensive line. A lot of the strength is in the middle. So Jordan Love has time. I would just say that the value to me seems like it's on the Green Bay Packers in this game. No play for me. I agree with you on the numerical value of it. But if you're going to make a play here, I think you just go with the Packers or nothing else.
again, Philly dealing with new coordinators, so continuity,
Right.
and the hype is good, but it takes time. 11 people be on the same page, so I
100%.
tend to agree.
Still a team, still a culture, right? Still an organization at the end of the day, which is what matters in the NFL, which is why I love the NFL. Okay, moving on to Sunday night, classic Sunday night football game, and a rematch of another playoff game last year, a game that ended 23-24 with the Lions escaping against the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, Matthew Stafford used to play for the Detroit Lions, so there's always that revenge factor there. Same thing for Jared Goff, though, right? He used to play for the Rams. This game's in Detroit. Again, a number that we haven't seen move very much at all. You can find some 3.5s out there now. Either way, obviously that wouldn't be advantageous if you're trying to bet on the Lions, but it opened at 3, staying around 3 or 3.5 at most books. Lions, Rams. What do you got on this one, Lou?
Yeah, I got, again, just kind of like the other games, a lot of intrigue. Can't wait to watch it. I believe the Rams are, with the zero that I know, meaning I know I don't know anything. I do have feelings that the Rams, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm in the NFC West. I feel all of those teams are improving there. Maybe not the Niners. Maybe the Niners come down and the other teams all tweak up just a little bit, and I think the Rams do. I like McVay. I like him on the bounce after maybe an off year last year. They found themselves a running back, got a new rookie running back in there, and so I think I like their physicality, and it should be another very interesting, close, tight game in Detroit this week, I think Detroit should be the favorite. I put a lot of emphasis on horses, meaning the offensive and defensive lines. That's where Detroit is most equipped. And so I look for them to have a really strong season, but I look for the Rams to be improved. But no real strong opinions on the game other than that, although I will say, I believe in week one we'll see some unders. I tend to think that defenses will be ahead. However, in this game, I like the offenses a little bit indoors on a fast track, and maybe there's points in this one.
Yeah, I like that. I like that angle a lot. I definitely lean in that direction as well. Defense of the Detroit Lions always going through some transition as well. But I like that addition of DJ Reader in the interior part of the Detroit line. I think that could really free up Aiden Hutchinson on the end, who's kind of been doing it by himself a lot, right, from game to game for the Lions as far as pass pressure goes. I'll just keep this one short because I don't have a play on this one either. But Lions-Rams should be an excellent game. I want to take the Rams because of the hook. There are some 3.5s out there now. That feels like value. We know in the NFL that key numbers like 3 can be very important. That just means that more games end on 3, 6, and 7 than other numbers as far as ending margins go. So, the 3.5 sounds like an attractive thing, but I think this could go either way. Two very talented teams, and you could easily see a win by margin for the Lions at home. So it's a stay away for me, but two teams that I think are going to impress again this season. Even though the Rams, right, they lost Aaron Donald. Sean McVay is a professional coach. They have a great culture, and they'll find a way. Chronologically, I'm going to step back here and go backwards a little bit, Lou, because I realize that there's a game that you really want to highlight too, and that is the Cleveland Browns and Dallas Cowboys. This game is at Cleveland. The Browns are now the favorite. Now, this is one area where we've seen some line movement, right? Because originally the Cowboys came out as a very short favorite. Cleveland at home. I think there's just a lot of talking heads and professional handicappers and analysts kind of selling the Cowboys this season, right? Because of all the shenanigans with CeeDee Lamb, who now has a contract. He's going to play. But there's some dissenting opinions about these Cowboys, and I think people are lower on them this season, heading into the season, because of the lack of changes they've made and maybe some of the very minute changes they made that a lot of people don't think are going to work out very well. Browns and Cowboys, Lou, where are you at with this one?
Yeah, well, I wanted to get a game we could talk about, Chris, for our European friends that we actually feel and have some passion for. And that, to me, is based on opportunity. And that comes from lines moving. In May, when these lines came out, Dallas was a 1-point favorite. That makes sense, according to me. And now we fast forward. We're getting ready for the season to start. And in my mind, they still got to take care of Dak Prescott, the quarterback back for Dallas's contract. That's going to get done. But Lamb is done. His contract's in. The team's cohesive. They're focusing forward, and they know that they have plenty of haters. And I want to say that early in the season, I think I was leaning, based on schedule strength and rest days, etc., a little away from the Cowboys. But I also sense the tsunami wave of fade the Cowboys, and I think it's affecting how people look at the team this year. I think it's also affecting how people look at them in week one, and that's proven by the fact that the line went from Dallas 1. Now they're getting 2.5 in Cleveland. Now, at this point in time, does it get to 3? I have to say no. This is America's team, Dallas. And I think that when we get to Saturday, Sunday, and we see the tsunami wave of people betting, because there's only 15, 18, 20% of the bets have been made up until now. They're all coming the day of the game, and that's when we're going to see wild line movement. I think it's possible at that point in time there'll be a little public on the Cowboys, and that game could get closer to 0. So I believe the time to take it is now. Either take it straight at the 2.5, and you mentioned earlier how important 3 is. 3 is a number that the NFL lands on about 16, 17% of the time. So for me to get plus 2.5 instead of plus 3, I never like to give that 15, 18% away. So I want to grab it. Will I buy it up to 3? No. Can I use a teaser and take Dallas up to 8.5? That's a device and a tool, a teaser, that I really, really believe is appropriate for this game. A 2-team 6-point teaser will cost you from -1. If you can find a 110, you have to be old saddle like me, but they're mostly -115 to -125. The juice eats you up, but you get to use 6 points in 2 games. And one of them for me would surely be that Dallas up to 8.5. I'm covering all the key numbers: 3, 4, 6, 7, even the 8 that has come into vogue since the since the extra points were adjusted. So I wanted to mention the Dallas game because I believe the reaction to Cleveland away from Dallas is an overreaction by a lot of people like us that bet early, Chris, and sharp, square, round or razor, marble or whatever. Call me whatever you want. Just call me a winner when Sunday comes, and I'm going to take all those extra 3.5 points and I'm going to use them with Dallas.
Yeah, the one game where you see there's significant movement, and there can certainly be significant pushback to that, right? This is the Dallas Cowboys team who is consistently one of the best offenses in the NFL in the regular season, right? Until they meet San Francisco in the playoffs. But these Dallas Cowboys are doing it year after year. I know they've lost some pieces, especially on their offensive line. But I mean, most of their core pieces are still there. And as long as you have CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that kid is getting open no matter what, right? So he opens up the entire offense. For our European friends out there, too, when we talk about juice and the minus this and that, all we're saying is for a teaser, which I'm glad you mentioned, Lou, you just want to get the best value possible because some sports books are going to they're not going to give you great value for even a 2-team 6-point teaser. So you want to shop around for that a little bit. But I love that you mentioned the teaser in this case because that's probably the only way I'm going to touch it. Probably a stay away for me, but you can tease that up through all the key numbers, right? 3, 6, 7, you get up to 8.5. And a game that should at least be close, right? I think this is going to be a very defensive game. Cleveland defense played really well last year. They continue to kind of hold up the team. And the Cowboys haven't had as much transition on the defensive side. They don't have Stephon Gilmore anymore. I think that could hurt them. But I don't trust Deshaun Watson as far as I can throw him loose. So this should be a very defensive game, and that only aids the fact that it should be a close game overall. So no play for me. Love what you said on Cowboys and Browns, and you see the clear value and that much of a change in the spread.
We don't get that much point spread movement during the regular season, and if we do, everyone takes note.
That's right. Our final game that we'll discuss today, Monday Night Football. You talk about a showcase game, Lou. You got the San Francisco 49ers, obviously off that Super Bowl loss. Now they're kind of gaining some momentum, right? They're signing everybody. Trent Williams, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, everybody's there. Everybody's happy, it seems. But now we finally get to see these New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers, hopefully staying healthy in that very elite defense that the Jets can offer. Saw some significant line movement in this one too, Lou. This one's kind of been bouncing all over the place. Opened up at 6 many moons ago. It was down to 3.5 at some sports books not long ago. Now it's kind of settled in that 4.5 range again, depending on where you look. This is a tough one because there's a lot of unknowns, obviously, about the Jets. But what do you see for this one at Santa Clara on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, great game. Rodgers played at Cal. He's returning home. Every time he goes back in Northern Cal to play football, he gets bludgeoned. So his record is poor, but he's coming with some new troops this time, and these new troops look good to me. They really do. I tend to be a little bullish on the Jets this year. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl? Maybe not that bullish, but I surely see them improved in the East. Good, really top-end running back. These teams are almost on offense, somewhat mirrors of each other. Yeah. Great wide receiving cores. The tight end for the Jets may not be what Kittle is, but the running back sure is, and maybe quarterback Purdy grows into it. But the long and the short of this one is how you perceive each team. I will say that one season total over-under season win for me is San Francisco under 11.5. There is numerous reasons why I believe that's going to happen, and a lot of it had to do with some of the contract squabbles in the preseason. Now that those are fixed, those guys got to come in, get their continuity set. This is a team with a new defensive coordinator. This is a team whose defense was anchored on their defensive linemen. Oh, by the way, they've lost 3 of those guys, and so they're bringing in a new defense. They're bringing in new personnel. Going to take the San Francisco team a little time to gel. They played 3 extra games last year to get to the Super Bowl and lose. As well, they have 22 days of negative rest differential this year on their schedule. It's the worst in the NFL. What's worse than that is that last year they had 20 days of negative rest differential. That was the worst in the NFL. So the schedule's hard on them. They've got negative days of rest differential. You got a running back in Christian McCaffrey that had 340 touches last year, and he's been injured before, and that's why Carolina got rid of him. So I think there's enough question mark with San Fran over the season. As far as this first particular game goes, I think the Jets are coming in live. We can explain the line move because of the San Francisco holdouts. I think that the 3.5 move back to 4.5, Chris, is indicative of the returning players coming back to San Fran, even though they may not play a full game. So, great game. Got to lean to the home team. The Jets are going to have to prove it to me against the Niners. But overall, I'm a fade on the 49ers.
Yeah, I have yet to make a play in this game, too. I'm getting closer, Lou, to making a play on the Jets, only because of the kind of things you're talking about, right? Like, not to get too esoteric, but year after year, San Francisco seems to be in these spots, and the psychological challenge that must occur to just return every single year and hope to get there again, right? You felt that from them last season. Like, this is our opportunity to win a Super Bowl. Of course, when you go up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, that's another story altogether. And we know how that story went. Now to return again with some of the transitions that they've had and to face, I'll just say first, a defense of this caliber right from week one, which we've seen that Jets defense carry their team into some wins over and over again last year when they basically didn't have a quarterback. All Aaron Rodgers has to do is even be average, like move the ball somewhat down the field. And you got to figure Jets are at least going to be in these games. My big question about the Jets, and to your point, you're going to have to prove it to us first, is that offensive line. Now, they picked up some real guys, right? We talked about the Cowboys. Tyron Smith comes over to the Jets. What the Ravens lost, Morgan Moses comes over from there, right? So they got some good guys in their offensive line, but making that gel right away and coming together and being a formidable offensive front for an aging Aaron Rodgers is a really important thing. And San Francisco still has some guys on that side, right? So it could be a very defensive game. Again, here, I kind of see the defenses being ahead of the offenses by a long shot in this one. But I hope for a close one. And again, we're starting to see those numbers rise, which I like that the perception is strengthening on the 49ers, where I would say the Jets, who have had a pretty quiet all season compared to what they had the season before, are coming into this ready to prove something in a quiet manner, which I like that. I like that way more than last year, Lou. So lean Jets for me too, and no players here as well.
Should be a great weekend full of games. I can promise you I'll have more fodder in week 2 and 3 and 4 as we move on and we get to learn these teams, how they view themselves, how we view them, and there's injuries and everything else to provide a little more advantage and give us a little bit more knowledge than the zero that we're starting out with.
100%. Nothing better than overreaction week 2 in the NFL. And the NFL knows how to do business. So it should be some very entertaining games this weekend. Enjoy, everyone. And thank you so much for having us here with you today.